Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. There's no denying that Warzone has been a roller coaster as of late. And by as of late, I really honestly could say its entire lifespan, quite frankly. Between MW 2019 launching, the hype being absolutely insane, Warzone becoming one of, if not the largest game on the planet initially after its launch phase, right? And then sort of being a bumpy road throughout Cold War with a lot of the launch issues that happened then, into Vanguard, which didn't have much hype for it being a past era or a past time period based game there. Then you get to Warzone 2 and the hype is back. It actually, the pre-launch hype for Warzone 2 exceeds the initial hype and trendiness, if you will, of the launch of Warzone. Warzone, when you look at something like Google Trends, peaked just when Warzone 2 was dropping. There was so much hype for the next era of COD, a reset, if you will. And of course, we all know what happened. They completely changed the game. It backfired in a lot of ways. People were not thrilled with how Warzone felt in the Warzone 2 era. And then MW3 Warzone sort of walks all that back, changes things for the better. And then Black Ops 6 Warzone, again, ton of hype, ton of potential. Launch update happens and everything is broken. And throughout all of this entire roller coaster ride that we've been on since the launch of Warzone back in 2020, Warzone has made a crucial mistake. It quite frankly could be the reason that it's been such a bumpy roller coaster ride and not something that's been a steady increase over time, or, you know, a plateau into another increase, a plateau into another increase. Maybe it dips down because of something, but then spikes back up. Instead, it's always up, down, up, down, up, down. This mistake has been an ongoing thing since the inception. You thought that maybe they were going to address it a little bit ago, and they ended up doubling down, and it's only backfired. What we're talking about today, if you haven't caught on yet, is Warzone being an integrated game. Warzone not being a standalone title. You look at other battle royales out there, Fortnite, Apex, so on and so forth, PUBG. These are standalone battle royale games, and they get updates all the time, similar to how Warzone does it. Fortnite has been knocking it out of the park. Well, the content might not be your thing, but the consistency with the game's updates and the quality of them and the general sentiment of them seems to be in a completely different realm to that of Call of Duty, which is, yes, getting updates. Very frequently they are breaking the game. Very frequently they are inconsistent in terms of the quality that they are adding to the game's life. It's a roller coaster. That is the best way to describe it. I'll try to, refrain from overusing and abusing that phrase here, but Warzone not being standalone has caused issue after issue after issue. And like I said at first, this maybe didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal, because when they launched Warzone, it's huge. It's directly connected to Modern Warfare 2019. So they knew exactly how the games were going to interact. They were built from the ground up together, right? So you knew what was going on there. And yeah, MW 2019 Warzone had its bugs, had its glitches. There was the demon glitch where your guns would freak out and cover your entire screen with like spikes and look all crazy, right? Like, there were issues in that game. Without a doubt, that's not a controversial thing to say. It's very objective. But the game still functioned, and obviously it did extremely well. And then you see the first ever integration update for Warzone with the Cold War update. And that's where you start to see right away, okay, things are a little bit weird here, because right away with the launch of that integration, so many things break. The entire new arsenal of Cold War weapons and attachments don't work as intended. Basically, every single one of them is bugged to an extreme extent. There's all sorts of new bugs and glitches in the game because of that. There's crossover problems with the games interacting, because now you have Cold War being built on this different engine. So you go and play that, it's a completely different feel. Then you use a weapon in Warzone, it's completely different. So there clearly was not sort of that, cohesion going on there. And that's the first ever integration update. So you're like, okay, benefit of the doubt, their first ever time doing something on this large scale. Who knows what the full true development time was for it? You kind of got to give them benefit of the doubt, right? It's the first time. It is what it is. It's a learning experience for everyone. And then you get to the second integration update with Vanguard, and things go poorly again. The game is borderline unplayable on console for months after the integration update. There are all sorts of issues, hackers galore, Krampus existed. It was another rough integration update, and it was for quite some time. There was some cool content, some cool updates, Kong versus Godzilla, all sorts of stuff like that. Over the course of time, we divert away from Verdansk to a map that was, not necessarily received the best with Caldera. It was like, okay, the integrations, I obviously we know why they're doing them. It's going to promote the premium title more. People will be incentivized to buy the game, level up their guns, because they're going to be the new meta ones every single time. But clearly these integration updates are a problem. They don't go over well. And that's when we get to Warzone 2, and it's like, oh, it's the new era. Warzone being built from the ground up yet again. prepared for the future this time, because you may recall back in Warzone 1 in that era, MW 2019, Cold War, Vanguard wasn't really a next gen, or I guess at this point now current gen game. Console didn't have FOV. There were large discrepancies in the quality of gameplay from console to PC. The game was not really balanced across the board from a player base experience, and so they directly addressed that with Warzone 2. All right, console FOV is here, new tech advancements, all sorts of changes, anti-cheat updates, this, that, the whole 9 yards. And Warzone 2 for that first year, again, it's got its bugs, it's got its glitches, kind of similar to MW 2019 and Warzone 1 when that first launched. The game just didn't go over well. People did not enjoy the Warzone gameplay, and that's what caused that massive drop off from being the most hype points in Warzone history to plummeting a month after the launch of the update and the new version of Warzone. But you're like, okay, they future proofed it, surely this will bounce back. Then we get the MW3 Warzone integration, and not much changes with that, just because MW3 and MW2, similar titles, of course, built off the same engine. The dev time for it was weird. It was a pretty lackluster integration, but it was relatively smoother, right? Like, yes, again, still the standard hiccups, the standard issues that were present when Warzone launched, when Warzone 2 launched, but it wasn't necessarily massively game breaking like the Cold War integration was, like the Vanguard integration was. You're like, okay, it still had some problems. You would have hoped that they would have had time to address this and learned from the past integrations, but it is what it is. And then you get to the Black Ops 6 integration, and it's like we're in Groundhog Day, because the day the update drops, everything breaks. The integration does not function. The game is unstable. Things aren't functioning as intended. There's bugs and glitches galore. It's not, necessarily to the same case of the Black Ops Cold War integration, where guns don't work, attachments don't work, etc. But it's clearly not a smooth integration by any means. And then we hear yet again that it's like, oh, this is our first time doing this on a Unison engine, because everything's being made off the same engine post MW2. But you're like, it wasn't the first integration, them doing that, so what do we take away from that? Obviously, this is not working at this point. We've had several examples. At first it's a small sample size. It's like, okay, they're gonna learn as time goes on. But it's a repeating scenario at this point. Every integration update for Warzone seems to cause long-term issues to the game. Would this be completely different if it were standalone? I feel like a lot of people probably default to the answer being yes, because you see other games doing the same sort of style, frequent seasonal updates, consistent changes in tuning, but they don't have these severe issues that Call of Duty has. And why they continue to do an integration as opposed to, a standalone title, we'll never probably get a clear answer on that. Obviously, a lot of it is tied to trying to get as many sales and as much money out of the premium game as possible. Maybe without Warzone being directly connected, there is perhaps a little bit of guilt with the insane monetization they do for a title that would be premium, charging $30 bundles in an $80 premium title that's not also connected to Warzone looks a whole lot more shady than having the excuse of, oh, the bundles are, primarily a Warzone thing, but they work in Black Ops 6 as well, right? Like, you kind of have that excuse, that bailout, although it's not a very good one, but still, the standalone thing maybe creates some other issues or concerns from Call of Duty's standpoint, but it addresses concerns from the player base standpoint, right? You also have the situation now where the game is bloated, and that means another potential hard reset is coming. And this, again, is not something you see happen in Fortnite and PUBG and Apex, etc. With these other standalone titles, they see updates over time, and they build on each other, and they build on each other, but they're also not worried about vaulting things. And I think that's the term Fortnite uses, right? They have universal skins that will always stay in the game. The stuff that you bought the day that Fortnite launched will be in your locker all the way until the day the game is taken offline and shut down completely, right? Whereas in Warzone now, we're going directly back to the same situation that we were already in before towards the end of Vanguard, where we have almost 200 plus guns, 1 billion attachments. Most of it's useless because they don't balance it all. They don't tune it all. There's too much going on in the game, which is going to cause another large reset, probably happening with COD 2026 and the next major engine overhaul or engine upgrade, right, with Infinity Ward's next title, Modern Warfare 4. And that presumably means we're gonna lose all the operator skins, all the blueprints, camos, etc. that we just earned throughout MW 2022, MW3, Black Ops 6, soon to be Black Ops 7, right? At least we can assume that so far. And that, again, is going to cause problems in the community. People are going to be upset that they spent all this money, all this time on a game to only have their stuff forcibly removed because the game can't sustain that level of bloat long term. We're repeating the same cycle we just did back in Warzone 1. That is an issue. Having it as standalone and knowing, okay, This year we're using the Black Ops 6 guns, but your camos, your blueprints will still be available on the old guns, or they have it as a universal blueprint for the entire weapon class, like Fortnite does with their skins. It applies to all the rifles or all the SMGs. Well, then you don't lose this thing you paid for. Operator skins could just stay in the game because it's an operator at the end of the day. It's not nearly as a big of an impact on gameplay as a whole weapon is, or something huge like that. You could test and play around with features that wouldn't have to also apply to multiplayer, to zombies, that would interact with that code and potentially break things or leak things and all this stuff. COD HQ and this sort of seamlessness has created a situation that's anything but, as we've talked about, and Warzone being a heavy impact on that seemingly contributes to the problem in a major way that could otherwise probably be avoided if this were standalone. And that's not to say Warzone being standalone would suddenly fix every single issue, but it would probably help a ton with development, having Raven be in control of their own projects the entire time from start to finish, rather than having to constantly adjust on the fly for whatever new thing is happening in the premium title. Probably saves a ton of stress and probably avoids a ton of issues there. And then the longevity of it is more sustainable as well. And it just sucks, honestly, to say that we're this far into Warzone, they haven't experimented with this, and by the time they do, maybe it's too late for Warzone. The game is losing interest because the updates have been so problematic and so backwards compared to what the community is looking for. And the further along we get without a drastic shift here, without a drastic change or even an acknowledgement of it, probably we're going to see more people drop off, unless the Black Ops 7 integration is utterly flawless in a sense and completely changes things again for the better, like maybe MW3 Warzone did a bit and it can sustain players. We could be having the same conversation next year as well. Time is going to tell, but Warzone being an integration-based game and not a standalone game probably is the biggest mistake that it's made to date, and it has, been a consistent reason behind issue after issue after issue. I've seen a lot of talk about Warzone potentially ever going standalone. That's kind of why I wanted to make this video, break down the entire situation and talk about why that's probably such a necessary step. I know several of you probably agree with that sentiment. Some of you may oppose it. Of course, though, as always, feel free to drop your thoughts down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to make sure that each and every day you're in the know for all things going on in COD, feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.